So I've been thinking a lot about this whole idea of building a personal brand. I think it's one of those phrases that we now hear pretty much everywhere. And if you're looking into that, you've probably been told that you need to spend hours crafting the perfect banner, coming up with the perfect mission statement, and going through all these different positioning frameworks to really find out what your brand and business is. If you've been caught up in this, I guess the first thing I want to do is just give you permission to stop for a second and just to let it all go. Because I've come to believe that really building a good brand takes a totally different approach. Because this old approach that all the gurus teach, it leaves you feeling like a real imposter because you've gone through all this complex stuff and you have all this fancy language that doesn't really express meaningfully or authentically what you're really trying to do. So, what if all of this stuff, the banners, the mission statements, whatever it is, are all just the very last thing that you should be worrying about? What if building a brand that people actually trust that brings the kind of opportunities when you're not even looking for them with almost no aesthetics or frameworks at all is actually something that's possible? And so my mission with this video is to explore what happens when you throw out the old rulebook. I want to focus on one thing that no one can ever copy, and it's something that I call your life resume. And what that basically is all the undeniable proof that helps people to trust you before you ever even try selling to them at all. And so it's kind of a way for people to get a sense of who you are, what you've actually done, and to build a business ultimately that's true to you and what you really want to be doing. So to start with, I want to take you a few years back because I fell into this trap myself, and that's why I feel so strongly about it. When I first decided to build my own brand, I did what everyone tells you to do. I went down this super deep rabbit hole of all the things I should be doing to nail my positioning, right? So I spent literal weeks agonizing over the perfect banner. I went through all these different gurus' positioning frameworks to kind of find out who's my target market, what kind of message is going to resonate with the most. I did all this market research. What's their ICP? What's keeping them up at night? All this kind of stuff, right? I had this big, like 20-page Notion document created, and on paper, it was the perfect brand. It had things like my system does X to help you avoid Y. But the problem was I had no clients. I had no authority. I had no trust. People would see my bio and they'd be like, that's nice. But it really did kind of feel like shouting into the void because my voice was just getting lost with 1,000 other people who had a really slick mission statement just like me. And so I started getting really burned out and I got frustrated and I got really close to quitting. And I felt like a fraud, like my brand did not reflect what I was trying to do, what I was trying to put out there. And there was this disconnect between the polished image that I was putting out there and what I was actually doing, what I was actually getting. And so it was more like, I was more like putting on a costume. I was performing when I was showing up online. And I knew that that's not the kind of business that I really wanted to build. And so that's when I had this realization that changed a lot for me. And that is that you are not your mission statement. Your brand is not a website or the fonts or the colors that you use. Your brand is just your reputation. And you build your reputation by the things that you do, not by the things that you say that you do. Right. And so that was a really big turning point for me because it was just a huge shift in perspective where I stopped asking myself, how can I be more credible? And I started asking, what have I actually done? What do I need to do for my brand statement or what I'm trying to convey to really be true? And so my brand started with just me documenting what am I really doing and why does that matter to me? And so this is where the idea of the life resume came from. Because for me, your life resume is like a living portfolio of your actions, your failures, and then kind of what you learned from them. It's that kind of your collection, I guess, of proof of who you are and that you are what you say you are. And so the focus then became instead of all the colors, the fonts, and all this stuff, where are my receipts and what kind of impact did that have for me and for the people that I worked with, right? So think about it. Who do you trust more? Is it someone with the slickest website that tells you they're an expert, or is it the person who's been building this like binge bank in public for years of content and how they've been showing up and the people they've helped and the results they've been getting and all that kind of stuff? For me, the answer is pretty obvious because trust is one of those things that everyone wants for their brand, but It's something you have to earn. You have to put in the work. And so you have to build the proof. You have to stack the evidence in your favor before you ever even ask for something. So the biggest question for me then became, how do I actually build this thing, right? And so this is something that I'm still figuring out, just like everyone else, but I'm trying to focus on 4 key pillars. The first pillar is to create a stack of undeniable proof. So before you ever teach anything, you have to do something. Before you sell, you have to serve something. And so the most important first step is to build a body of work. And this is the foundation for everything else, because you're creating this like stack of undeniable proof that basically speaks for itself. You don't even have to promote or do anything crazy because your audience can see the evidence for themselves. So what does this look like? So if you're a writer, it means having a portfolio of articles that you published for yourself or for other people. If you're a developer, this is a GitHub filled with the projects and things that you've worked on. If it's a coach, it's the transformation stories and the client testimonials of people that you helped, maybe even for free when you first started, right? And so all of these things, they're your receipts. But the important thing is that every action is a brick in the wall that you're trying to build of your credibility. It's kind of building this massive canvas that people can't really get around when they see you online. The second pillar is you have to master authentic storytelling. And this is another one of those buzzwords, so I'm going to try and keep it really simple. If you have that foundation of proof, you now need to wrap it in a story. Because in a world where there's tons of AI content, information is commoditized, your personal story is what's going to set you apart. And so authenticity, I think, is one of these buzzwords that's kind of lost its meaning, but I think it means, you don't have to overshare or cry in public or do anything crazy or tell the most personal stories. I think authentic storytelling is just about sharing the why. What happened? What did it mean to you? And so this little formula that I've been exploring is just to keep stories really simple, is to lead with the failure, then follow with the win, and then end with the lesson. And I don't remember who I got this from. If I can remember it, I'll include it. But you want to talk about the struggles that you had. What was the project that you did that didn't work out? What was the bad advice that you followed? All these things, they make you more relatable, and then you can show the transformation. How did you push through to the win? What did you do? What did that mean to you? That kind of thing. And as your audience consumes this content, they connect with you, and it builds a really powerful bond, because you're not just someone that's telling them, you need to do this, you need to do that, right? You're someone who's walked the walk, talks, and is talking the talk now, right? And so the creators that are really standing out, and the ones that you're probably connecting with, are the ones that are telling the real story. They're sharing the messiness and everything, and that's the secret sauce that no one can copy. And so that leads me into the third pillar, which is just to be really consistent with what you're sharing. And so now that you have the proof, you have a story, you have to be consistently sharing. Because what people don't talk about is that the point of consistency is that you're building reliability. If someone shows up one day and does this and shows up the next day and does that, they're not reliable. And if they're not reliable, you're not trustworthy. It breaks trust immediately. So the important thing to keep in mind is that this is not about being perfect. It's just about being coherent so people can follow your story and your narrative, right? And so I try and define kind of what my core mission is, what my core value is, and then I try and talk about a lot of those things. So for me, it's like personal branding, content, business, entrepreneurship, that kind of thing. And I only really talk about those things. This is also, I think, where the visual element can come into play a lot, because the repetition of the colors and the themes and that kind of thing help people to recognize you. It builds that kind of like visual consistency. But the important thing is that you're just showing up with your message, with the value and the proof that you've stacked. And then the fourth is this basically a give until you ask mentality. And so we don't want to be building our foundation on short-term thinking. We want to be thinking long-term, and we want our strategy to be built around that. And so the main thinking here is just give until they ask. Provide value, help people, and do these things without expecting something in return. And do this for like 6 months. This can be through detailed in-depth tutorials. This could be Q&As. This could be responding to DMs of people that have basic questions for you. All of these things, and this is one of those unquantifiable things that gurus don't talk about. All of this is building goodwill. and you're sharing expertise with people in real time with every single interaction that you have. And I think the effects of this are really profound because you've given someone a lot of value. You've genuinely helped them. And so if you try to tell them, "Hey, I can help you in another way later and it's going to cost you this much," it feels like the natural next step because you've already built that connection, you've built that trust, and you've already helped them, right? And so we want to delay that small ask now in exchange for more kind of relational capital in the future. And as we really just delight and care for these people, they'll be the ones to refer us in the future. So, look, building a brand like this is definitely not a hack. It is a long term thing, it's doing real, meaningful work, and then sharing that honestly. And that takes patience. That takes practice. And so, if this approach resonates with you, and maybe you're a little tired of all the superficial stuff that gurus and other people are sharing online, I hope that you'll follow along. My goal is to make more of these videos and share things that I think will be meaningful and helpful and help people to take a more grounded and kind of spiritual approach to business. So, to bring this all home and just to wrap it up, I guess you now have a choice. You can spend the next year building the perfect brand that's perfectly optimized with the best logo and the colors, or you can start helping people and build an undeniable stack of proof. You can spend your time crafting the perfect elevator pitch, or you can just tell the true story of what you're doing, your success and your struggles. And so I guess the important thing to remember is just that a personal brand is not like a mask that you need to wear or an act you have to put on. It's just a reputation that you earn through repeated exposure. And that's what people say and think about you when you're not there. So instead of building a brand that looks good, maybe we need to start building a brand that just is good, and living a life and sharing that in a way that we build a resume for people that builds the kind of trust and authority that actually opens the doors and creates those opportunities that we're really looking for. I don't know. I think that's what I want to optimize for personally.